Hello and welcome to the Matchbook Champions League podcast. I'm Phil Kitromilides. It's the penultimate show of the season. There are just 3 games left in this season's competition, 2 of them coming up this week to determine who'll be heading to Madrid on the 1st of June to the final at the Estadio Wanda Metropolitano. Barcelona in pole position heading to Anfield. Of course, they're leading 3-0 after the first leg, although Liverpool do have previous in coming from 3 goals down in the second half of a big European tie. Ajax too, they're looking good to make the final. They are leading 1-0 ahead of their game in Amsterdam against Spurs. We're going to go in depth on both of those ties on the show today and also take a look at the Europa League, where an all Premier League final between Arsenal and Chelsea looks very much on the cards. If you're listening to the podcast, that's great. Nothing really changes. We're also going out live on Facebook and Twitter as well. So welcome to everybody who is viewing the podcast for the very first time this season. I'm joined on the programme today by Ian Broadrick from Betting Emporium, Mark O'Hare from We Love Betting, and also Sully from Matchbook, who is going to give us the all-important prices for our selections. Mark, hello. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thanks, Phil. Very much looking forward to another week of Champions League football. I think we've got 2 very different games on the agenda this week, but yeah, really enjoyed last week. Didn't go quite how I expected it to, so hopefully a few more thrills and spills this week.
Sully has got the odds for us. I can tell you that Matchbook have got a market of who's going to be the finalists. It's 1.40. Sorry, I'm doing Sully's work for him, but it's 1.40 that it's going to be a Barcelona Ajax final. Is it that clear cut for you, Mark?
No, it's not actually. I mean, we'll come into the Ajax Spurs game, but I think the way the dynamics of that tie are going to play out, with the away goals rule playing such a key part of things, I'm not so sure that Ajax are nailed on for that final spot. I think it's very difficult to find positives really for Liverpool fans, particularly with the team news. But we'll come on to that soon. But yeah, I think Barcelona probably will be playing there. I'm not certain it will be an Ajax-Barcelona final, though. I think Spurs have got an outside chance.
Okay, we'll talk more on that. Hold that thought. Brothers, hello.
Hi, Mark. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Phil. Mark's the other guy. Don't worry. It's all right.
I'm sorry.
It's all right, brothers. We haven't been doing this 6 months. That's fine. Don't worry about it. You had a couple of winners last week from last week's programme. You fancied Ajax to do the job in North London, and that duly did get done. Is it clear cut for you that it's going to be Barca Ajax in the final?
I think possibly I'm less confident now than I would have been last week after the Ajax Spurs game. I think Spurs put in a tremendous effort, and I think with Son back this week, there's reasons for Spurs fans to be positive. You'll be pleased to hear. So
Yes.
I think in my mind, I'm certainly looking at the markets where Spurs could qualify, and I think there's some potential value to be had in being on side with them. So no, I don't think it's Barcelona Ajax is nailed on by any stretch. I certainly wouldn't be backing it at 1.4.
Okay, let's talk about the markets and let's talk about that Spurs Ajax game. Sully, how's it looking for people who want to back Spurs, Ajax, or the draw?
Good afternoon, Phil. Great to see you all, guys. And just so I want to make a point here, I really don't want to jinx this thing at the moment because well, you guys have had so many winners in the last couple of weeks. It's been amazing.
Yeah, I mean, try not to jinx it because it has been really good. The guys have been on fire, and yeah, let's see if we can get a couple more winners at least today.
Absolutely, and betting it in Amsterdam on Wednesday night. 2.2 Ajax, 3.5 Tottenham Hotspur, 3.78 is the draw, and Tottenham Hotspur getting a quarter of a goal starting, currently back at a 2.1 here at Matchbook, and the total, Phil, is 2.75. And to qualify, Phil, you can back Tottenham Hotspur at 3.7. Tempting.
And that price has actually drifted a little bit. I was looking at it yesterday and it was around about 3.40. So 3.70 is looking like an interesting bet for Spurs to qualify. And I'm not just saying that as a Spurs fan. However, they have been on an impressively bad run of form, Spurs. They've lost 5 of the last 6 games in all competitions. It's 9 of the last 15 they've lost if you go a little bit further back. And yet they're on the cusp of this historic achievement. Mark, what's your angle for this game? Do you fancy Spurs to qualify?
I do, but I'm not going to steal Brodders' thunder because I know he's done a bit of homework on that side of things. So for me, my first and main bet really will be to get with the goals. Going back to that first leg, I think, well, Pochettino admitted he made a mistake of his starting 11. I was quite surprised with the team he went with. I thought it was quite a poor call, to be honest, to not start Lucas Moura up front on his own, not just in attacking sense, but also in a defensive manner, because he can press that Ajax team. That Ajax team does need to be pressed in possession. He's more mobile, more capable of doing that than Llorente, and Llorente did okay, I know, but playing a 5-man defence at home just didn't really appeal to me, really. And I did expect Sissoko to play too. He obviously wasn't 100% fit, but you saw the impact he made when he came off the bench. And his involvement could be key here, because he's got that energy to really rattle this Ajax team. And they do need to be rattled when they're in possession. We saw that after the first 30 minutes when Spurs put pressure on them. They are vulnerable defensively and in midfield. I just want a bit more from that sort of attacking trident of Lucas, Eriksen and Ali. Those players really need to step up. They looked flat. They looked like they lacked inspiration. Really disappointing performance. There's a little kind of murmurings now that Vertonghen might be involved, which would obviously be a big boost. Son's inclusion would be a big boost too. It's just a bit worrying, really. I was really surprised he played such a strong team at the weekend at Bournemouth, and they had to play with 9 men for 40 minutes as well. So, they're already looking like they're running out of gas towards the end of the season, which is concerning. I think the Saturday-Wednesday schedule is a bonus. Ajax were involved in the Dutch Cup final on Sunday night, which, while I know there's no travel involved there, there is an emotional toil there. They won the competition really comfortably 4-0, but that is something to bear in mind. And this tie, if you look at the tie from a wider perspective, 17 teams have won away from home in the Champions League semi-final first leg. 16 have gone on to qualify, but I just think the dynamics of this tie almost give Spurs a little bit of an advantage. They don't want to be favourites here. They want to be going here as the underdogs, like Ajax did at Real Madrid and Juventus, where there's nothing to lose. Get the away goal. Suddenly the pressure's all on the home team, and Ajax haven't had to deal with that yet. They've been to Madrid and Juventus when the two teams have missed their best centre halves. I think things were nicely set up for them in those games, whereas there's extra pressure here. They've got a home advantage, a lead from the first leg too, and I just think there's definitely potential here for Spurs to get something. That game in the first leg was the first time they'd failed to score in 20 Champions League games. I do expect them to score. I've seen this Ajax team play absolutely superbly this season, but I've also seen them get crushed by Feyenoord 6-0 in January. They also gave up a 3-goal lead against Heerenveen, which I saw earlier this year as well. So there is vulnerabilities there, and I think if Spurs can get up and at them early on, get that goal before half-time, then it's all in Spurs' favour here. But I think Ajax do have enough ability on their own to cut this team to shreds if they want to on the counter-attack too. So we could be in for a real humdinger of a game. If you look back to what Spurs did in the the second leg against Man City, that incredible 4-3 game, I wouldn't be too surprised if we saw something similar. So I think over 2 3/4 goals is overpriced for me. So that's my main bet for this one.
Remember, Ajax have only won 2 of the 5 games they've played at home in the Champions League this season. Those big wins that they've had have come away from home, obviously in Madrid against Real Madrid, winning 4-1 at the Bernabeu and beating Juventus in Turin in the previous round. Brothers, last week you fancied Ajax, you duly tipped them plus a quarter, and that came in pretty comfortably. Do you fancy them this week, or are we going for Spurs to qualify?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that it was quite as comfortable as it may have appeared, because obviously Ajax dominated for the first half hour or so, and that's been well documented. But I think for the last hour of the game, Spurs were well on top, and I think they lacked the cutting edge that they desperately needed without Son and Kane. I thought Llorente did very well up front in terms of holding up the ball. I thought he matched quite well with De Ligt. I actually thought, De Ligt would dominate him more, but I thought he was very clever pulling onto Blind. And I think the biggest problem that Spurs had was there was no one running off Llorente's hold-up play. Son's back, and he's done fantastically well this season, subbing in for Harry Kane, playing through the middle. So I think there's lots of reasons to be positive about Spurs scoring goals in this game. I think Ajax has shown, as Mark said, Ajax have shown that they are more than capable of conceding. I think the home record may be a little bit misleading in terms of where Ajax seem to perform at their best is when the opposition are coming onto them. And I think, the reason that they were so good at Juventus and at Real Madrid was the fact that those teams were at home. They were having to press forwards, looking for goals, and that opened up spaces for Ajax to exploit. Whereas when they play at home, those teams were played in a more circumspect manner, and I think perhaps didn't give them quite the same space. But also Ajax played tremendously well in those games as well, and on another day would have won them. So I'm not, I'm not totally sold on the idea that Spurs are going to sort of walk through to the final. But I do think, at the prices, bearing in mind that Ajax only need a draw to qualify for the final, taking Spurs plus a quarter, the way that they played in that last hour is the most or the best that anyone has played against Ajax for the whole season. They really took it to them. I thought Sissoko was tremendous. I mean, God blimey, take us back 18 months, and anyone who was saying Sissoko was the key man for Spurs, and you'd be
in a Champions League semi-final.
Champions League semi-final. I mean, look, he's obviously just come tremendously good for them, and is now vital for them. So it was good to see him come off in the game against Bournemouth and get a bit of a rest. Son obviously got a lot of a rest because he had 40 minutes to think about what he'd been doing. And I think, again, there were good points made by Mark in terms of the problems that Spurs have with playing with 9 men for 40 minutes. But again, they'll have been massively buoyed by Arsenal's result yesterday. That confirms pretty, all bar some bizarre set of results in the final day, that Spurs have qualified. So I think they can devote all of their energies and all of their focus to this game, as they would anyway, of course. But I think it's fantastic. It's really teed up. I think Spurs at 3.7 to qualify is a very, very interesting price. I think the tie is not, is not done and dusted by any stretch of the imagination, and 3.7 is far too big.
You made that point actually about the emotional boost that Spurs would have had by Arsenal messing up at home to Brighton. It could have actually been that they were going into this game thinking, oh no, what have we done? We've really messed up losing at Bournemouth. And yet Arsenal helped them out in a way, certainly emotionally. So yeah, coming into this game, not feeling as negative as they would have done had Arsenal got a result at home to Brighton. All right, that is Ajax against Spurs. Let's move on and talk about Liverpool against Barcelona, a tie that is seemingly done and dusted. Or is it? Sully, what are the prices on the night?
Yeah, we had a tough one last week, Philip. We do a Periscope every Tuesday, myself and Mark O'Hare with the Champions League. We backed both teams to score. You can imagine our frustration when Salah hit the post that time. Not only that, I think a lot of people kind of forget about that fact that Sané had that fantastic chance in the first half that, he was bearing all of those this year. But anyway, everyone's got a hard luck story, and that was one for last week. Liverpool, unsurprisingly, favourites here, Philip, 2.56. Barcelona 2.89, the draw available there 3.78. You can back Barcelona at a very short price with a half a goal starting the Asian handicap at 1.61, and the total is pretty much the exact same as last week. We got the push there last week. Brodders tipped it up, and it's slightly favouring the under, and that's a flat 3.
The price for Liverpool has drifted after the team news. They were closer to actually even money before we found out that Mo Salah and Roberto Firmino are going to be missing. If you bear that in mind, they're missing 2 of their 3 most dangerous attacking players, and they need to score at least 3 goals. Barcelona, meantime, at the weekend, rested pretty much their entire first 11. It doesn't look good for Liverpool. Mark, can we make a case at all for Liverpool making a tie of it, or is it done and dusted?
It's very difficult to make a real strong case for them. I thought the first leg lived up to its billing. Brilliant game, such high quality football, but from a neutral perspective, we really missed that away goal for Liverpool. If they had come back with a 3-1 defeat, I'd have said absolutely game on here, regardless of Firmino or Salah being fit. The fact that both of them are out, it makes that glimmer of hope slightly less, and I think it's very difficult. It's going to be very, very difficult for them. We're expecting Barcelona to score. That means Liverpool are going to need 5 goals. And I think they'll come into this game expecting to have to score 5 goals regardless, which could mean we could be in for quite a frantic opening 45 minutes. I don't believe Jurgen Klopp nor Liverpool will believe this tie is dead. I don't believe they'll look to preserve energy for Sunday. I think they're going to refocus their energy all on this game. Klopp's already said after the Newcastle game he's got 2 cup finals left to play, and these boys are ready to go to battle and try and get this result, as well as next Sunday as well. So I think it's going to be a really good game, and for that reason alone, I think goals are again the best way to go. Slightly skinnier than I really wanted, but I'm still surprised we can get over 2 3/4 goals at a backable price. As I say, just getting into that sort of psychology of the Liverpool team and Klopp himself, they'll have been hurting after that last week. You know, they were so close to getting a result. The second goal was pretty unfortunate. The third goal was just, you know, a piece of genius, really. So they had their opportunities. You mentioned those chances. You know, Firmino, Salah, Mane, Milner all had great opportunities. Klopp said it was the best performance away from home in Europe under him, which is obviously saying something. And if you look at teams to have lost the first leg away from home in a knockout stage of the Champions League by a 3-goal margin, 12 of the 15 teams have actually turned around and won the return leg at home. So there is scope for them. If you look at the prices after Saturday, Liverpool around evens. Then it was confirmed Firmino was out. They went out to about 2.2. Now Salah's out. They're out to about 2.57. They've won 16 of 18 unbeaten games at home at Anfield since October's international break. And as we know, Barcelona have been notoriously flaky on the road in Europe in recent years. 1 win from 6 away from home. That was at United. Last time out in knockout games as well. They were smashed up by PSG before that epic comeback. They lost 3-0 away at Juventus and Roma too before they're obviously making their own comeback. So I guess there is precedent in this competition for these.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Say again, sorry.
You're saying there's a chance.
There's always a chance, but I think we've all learned that in the last couple of years in the Champions League that you know, you can't rule anything out. Leicester winning the Premier League, you know, there's enough now. We've got experience enough.
That was 5,000 to 1, Leicester winning the Premier League.
Exactly, you know, you can't forget those times. But I do think Liverpool have got a big task on their hands, and I just wonder, you know, after an hour, if they are sort of, if they're winning 2-1, knowing they need to score 3 goals, whether they will still put the foot down and go for it. I think they probably will. But I think the bigger picture is that they've got a big game on Sunday as well. So interesting game. I think I want to steer clear of the match odds just because in these kind of games where the away goals is in favour to the away team, you know, if Liverpool go chasing the game, Barcelona could pick them off. Liverpool could easily withdraw a couple of players with Sunday in mind, and Barcelona could easily just play out an easy win. So I'd prefer to focus on the goals, which I think is still a backable price considering these two teams are so good going forward.
Mark's spoken about how Liverpool might approach the game. Brothers, Barcelona obviously know that if they get that first goal, the game is essentially over. Do you expect Barca to come out and try and get that goal, or will they be relatively content to think, well, we've got a 3-0 lead, we'll try and just weather the expected storm from Liverpool and maybe pick them up on the break?
I think Valverde in Europe and generally has always been quite conservative when they play away from home. So I think one of the reasons for Barcelona's sort of less than stellar away record is the fact that they do set up relatively conservatively, and far, you know, strangely when you consider how aggressive and sort of all out attacking they are at the new camp. So I think, in my mind, I think what they will probably do is exactly what you suggested, which is look to contain, try and keep the crowd quiet, look to hit them on the counter. You've already touched on it earlier that they were able to rest a lot of their main players, and Liverpool are in the middle of this this title fight with Man City. And of course, you know, we're recording this on Monday afternoon, so it's before Man City play Leicester this evening. So, you know, clearly if there is a turn up and Man City don't beat Leicester tonight, then that could have an impact on the way that Liverpool approach this game. Certainly, if they're not having any kind of positive result by, say, half-time. And that makes betting on it quite difficult. But I think Mark's right. I think, you know, if you look at the players that are going to come in, you've got the likes of Sturridge, Shaqiri. They're not Salah, of course. They're not Firmino. But they are players who can play at the highest level. And they're capable of scoring goals against Barcelona, you know, especially the way that they played in that first leg. I thought, you know, that was the least convincing 3-0 win I think I've seen in a very long time. Yeah, Liverpool were clearly the better side. Could have scored with Mane early on. Salah obviously missed that open goal. They had, you know, Milner, you know, had a fantastic chance, which, you know, a yard either side of ter Stegen is in. So I think Liverpool can be positive. I think they will draw on memories, for example, from last season when they beat Man City 3-0 and they were 3-0 up in half an hour. You know, they will go for Barcelona and the crowd will be on fire. You know, it's a cliche, but Anfield on these big European nights is, you know, an absolutely intimidating and very, very loud place to be as an opposition player and fan. So I speak from experience as a Chelsea fan who's been there for a Champions League semi-final. which we lost on penalties.
And lost, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. Yeah, okay. We'll talk after Ajax. But I think looking at it, I think it's quite hard to be too firm in opinion on the game at this point in terms of odds. I think if I was going to, I certainly like Mark's angle. I think goals is the least dangerous way of approaching it, because I think Barcelona, they showed earlier in the season when Tottenham played them in the group stages that if you attack them and leave space, they've got the greatest player that's ever played the game. He could potentially just waltz through, take the game away from Liverpool by scoring once or twice, and he's unstoppable. You know, I don't see any way that if he just produces one of those moments or two of those moments, you know, whether it be a goal himself or, you know, a pass for Suarez. I mean, you can imagine Suarez scoring in front of the Kop, couldn't you? And blimey, O'Reilly, it's going to be a riot, especially if he celebrates like he did last week. I think his reception could be interesting. But, which
he would.
Well, of course, and you know what? I'm all for that. It really drives me mad when people get all uppity about players scoring against their former clubs and celebrating, and this sort of expectation in modern football that if you score, you're supposed to stand there and say, "Oh, I'm very sorry I scored against you," and be all, you know, that's rubbish. You know, if Liverpool didn't have to sell him, and you know, he's played for Barcelona. If he scores against the Kop, if I was him, I would give it both barrels, and deservedly so. But anyway, that's besides the point. I think looking at it, Liverpool are a potentially backable price for me. I mean, I like them at sort of 2.15, 2.17 when Salah was possibly playing. I think 2.56 is an overreaction. You know, he's a wonderful player. But they have got quality, you know, they've still got quality to potentially come in, as I say, with Sturridge and Shaqiri and the like. So I'll have a look at it nearer the time. I think Barcelona won't care if they lose 2-1 or 3-2, or, you know, as long as it's not looking like they're in any danger. I don't think they'll particularly be that fussed. And although I think as a bet, I think Mark's play of 2.75 goals is the way to go. I would certainly think long and hard about Liverpool at that sort of price.
Obviously, a lot of talk about the Liverpool team and that team news that Mohamed Salah and Roberto Firmino and Naby Keita, by the way, all three of them are unavailable. And between the three of them, they account for half of Liverpool's goals in the Champions League this season. Also, perhaps worth bearing in mind that Ousmane Dembélé is out for Barcelona. He was the only player who played on Saturday night at Celta Vigo who might have had a chance of starting at Anfield, and he duly got injured. And I actually think he possibly would have started with his pace, perhaps able to hurt Liverpool playing on the break. And I think in his absence, I'm not entirely sure if Coutinho is going to come in. I think they might play a four-man midfield with Arturo Vidal and Artur in that midfield alongside Rakitic and Busquets, and just put Suarez and Messi up front, and perhaps try and control the game a little bit. But yes, it should be very good. It should be a rock and roll game if Liverpool have their way at Anfield on Tuesday night. Shall we have a quick... Yes. Yeah.
One question just on that, because I think it'd be kind of remiss of us not to ask, because you are in Spain. What's the general mood there in Spain regards Barcelona? Because you have those really kind of prevalent memories from the 3-0 defeat against Roma. Is there any kind of, you know, thought process that it could be a similar result on Tuesday night?
It was funny, after the first leg, and you win 3-0 in a Champions League first leg semi-final, you should be absolutely delirious thinking, yeah, it's done. We are in the final. And they were a little bit disappointed not to have scored that fourth goal, particularly when they had such good opportunities to score a fourth, which really would have killed it. And I think that is sort of the mental scar of how much they were hurt by that Roma defeat last season. So they're going there, and they will be a little bit cautious, and they will remember what happened with Roma, which is why I cannot see for the life of me them giving up another 3-goal lead. And it's really important that Liverpool didn't score that goal, because I remember last season when Roma scored at the Camp Nou, and it was about, I think maybe about 7 or 8 minutes to go in the game, something like that, and thinking, oh, okay, if they get another, it could be on. And then at full time thinking, well, okay, it's almost done, but it's not impossible. But Liverpool don't have that away goal, and all right, they could win 3-0. Liverpool beating Barcelona 3-0 at Anfield, it's not impossible. Without Firmino and Salah, it's extremely difficult. But nevertheless, I think Barcelona are wary, and they're not as confident as they should be. I mean, I'm not a Barcelona fan. I'm not in Barcelona, and I think that it's very straightforward for Barcelona. I think fans and people associated with the club are perhaps a little bit more wary, and particularly after what happened last season with Roma.
I think you touched on it quite well there. As the lack of the away goal, and you can currently back Liverpool at a massive 16-1 here at Matchbook to qualify. But I think that 3.7 on Spurs might be the better play for.
Yeah, let's go with that, shall we? What about the? Shall we have a quick chat about the Europa League?
Let's go for it. Let's have a look at Chelsea, Eintracht Frankfurt. I'll just give you the betting first. You want to kick it to the lads, Phil? 1.39 are Chelsea, Eintracht Frankfurt at 8.4, 5.1 the draw. Eintracht are getting 1.25 goal on the Asian handicap, and the total is 2.75.
Obviously, it was 1-1 in the first leg. Chelsea, by the way, they're odds on to win the Europa League. They are the favourites of the four sides that are left in the competition. Brodders, you're a Chelsea fan. You don't gamble on Chelsea, so I don't know if we should speak to you. Maybe we should speak to Mark. Mark, is there an angle for this game, or should we just watch Chelsea waltz into the final?
Yeah, I do expect Chelsea to qualify. I think if you looked at the result last week in Frankfurt, they started Hazard on the bench. To me, that was an acceptance of gaining a top four spot domestically was far more achievable than winning the Europa League. But Sarri was obviously vindicated by that. Well, that's happened this weekend. So I'd expect them to play a strong team. There's no need for them not to this Thursday night. They can go all guns blazing for the trophy. They were the better team in Frankfurt. They won the shot count 16-6, only conceded the one shot on target, which was a goal. Crucially, I think team news-wise for Eintracht, they were missing Haller and Rebic, two of their key three forwards. Rebic will be back, Haller possibly too. But I think it's a bit of a shame, really. Frankfurt, a team I've loved this season. They've been absolutely fantastic. They've smashed the narrative in the Bundesliga and in Europe as a team who, just go all guns blazing in defence and in attack. They're a really energetic team, but unfortunately, they're running out of pace now towards the end of the season. They've made great strides. They're in the top four, but they're absolutely smashed up to pieces by Leverkusen on Sunday. They were spanked by 6 goals, really, and 18% of the ball as well. And their grip on that top four spot is really starting to be eaten up now. So they've exceeded expectations, but I think the road's probably coming to an end for them now. I think Chelsea will take this game very seriously. I expect Chelsea to win it, but the market suggests that too. So there's very little value to be gleaned from it. So I think goals are probably the way to play. I think Chelsea got a bit of a scare in the last round against Slavia Prague at Stamford Bridge. Frankfurt will look at that. They'll see that they can score goals at the bridge, but I think Chelsea will be too strong. So if there was a play, it'd probably be the same bet again, over 2.75 goals at a backable price.
Okay. Mark's had his say on Chelsea. We'll get Brodders to talk about Arsenal. Arsenal heading to Mestalla to take on Valencia and heading with a pretty healthy 3-1 lead to face Unai Emery's former club. Brodders, they should get the job done, shouldn't they, in Spain?
Yes, you would think so. But obviously, their away record has been poor all season, really. And Valencia are doing incredibly well in the second half of the La Liga season, as you know. So they're in their own battle for fourth place. I think it should be a really interesting game. I think Valencia and the Mestalla especially can be a very, very intimidating place. They got that away goal
for the home team and the away team as well. It's one of those places where the crowd are very, very, very expectant and almost a little bit harsh on their home players and managers. So if things are going well, it's great, but if things aren't going well, they're pretty quick to turn.
Well, and Arsenal are not noted for being a club with a huge amount of emotional backbone. So, in the nicest possible sense. So, I think, you've got these players. They've just messed up the Champions League at home. They know that they can't qualify now realistically for the top four. The Europa League is their last chance. So they're going in there, and it'll be very interesting to see what the Arsenal mindset is. They're clearly going to play their best side. All of their eggs are in this basket. And I think it clarifies things in terms of their approach, because that they're going to be very positive. And I think Arsenal are not a team that are going to be able to sit back and hope they don't lose 2-0 to Valencia at the start, because is a very possible, even probable outcome. So they're going to have to look to their strengths, and their strengths are Lacazette and Aubameyang up front. They will almost certainly concede. I can't see them keeping a clean sheet. I suspect they'll probably concede a couple of goals at least. The key question from an Arsenal perspective is whether or not they can score enough to ensure that they qualify. And I think they probably will. I think they have that quality. I thought they were fantastic in the last round against Napoli. Going to Naples and winning 1-0, and after defending a 2-0 lead from the first leg was an incredibly impressive performance, and the kind of thing that if you're an Arsenal fan, it would drive you absolutely spare, because you can put in performances like that, and then you can, throw in some absolute dodgepot ones like the game yesterday against Brighton, and they would definitely, in horse racing parlance, have a squiggle next to their names. So I think I wouldn't be rushing to be with Arsenal purely because, Valencia at home are incredibly strong. They've just come back a very strong win at the weekend against Huesca, where, they absolutely smashed them. And I think it will just be a fantastic night. I would certainly look at goals again as the angle to play it. I don't think either of these teams are necessarily very convincing at the back, and it should be a fun game to watch. And
Sully can give us the price for that game at Mestalla on Thursday evening.
Yeah, good game last week, as Brodders was saying. 1.9 Valencia at the Mestalla, 4.15 Arsenal, 4.05 is the draw. Arsenal getting a half a goal start, tempting price there 2.05, and the total is a flat 3, slightly favouring the under.
All right. Listen, I think we're going to leave it there. Guys, thank you very much for joining us. And thanks everyone who's joined us on Facebook and Twitter. Of course, we'll be back in a couple of weeks before the final to look ahead to the biggest game in world football, the Champions League final, which of course is on the 1st of June at the Estadio Wanda Metropolitano. Enjoy this week's football. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the Matchbook Betting Podcast on your preferred podcasting app.